Hello, and welcome to today's edition of Mama's Got Style, how upgrading your look will elevate your business, get you high-paying clients, and increase the fun factor in your life. I'm Kara Allan, your host, and today we're talking with Leah Beilhart. How are you, Leah?
Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for joining me today. So, can you tell me a little bit about you and your business and what you're up to in the world?
Ooh, okay. Well, for starters, I definitely claim right off the bat that I'm an Army brat. So I was very fortunate to be able to go around the world a couple of times. Spent a lot of my time in Germany, which was one of I guess, our last biggest duty stations. And it really just gave me a lot of insight on how I wanted to be as a young adult, and gave me a lot of experiences that I feel a lot of my peers haven't had. And from the get-go separated me on like how I communicated with other people. So I didn't really have the stereotypical like college wildlife that I kind of sometimes envy that, some friends have had.
Right.
But something that I really enjoy about myself is that I'm extremely curious. And I think a big part of that was that blessing of being able to grow up, under my dad being in the Army and being able to discover new cultures, and really be tested and challenged to live in countries where I don't speak the language. And at first I was very skeptical about it and was extremely judgmental because I was like, they don't want me here. Why, how am I supposed to fit in? And then after a while, you notice that those people are just as curious of you as you are of them, and they're willing to open their doors and their homes to have you learn more about what they're up to. So that transitioned to having an early experience with doing a service project in the Czech Republic. I was there, I think, for about a week. And in that week, we were building new parts of like playgrounds for younger schools, and we were meeting with like high schoolers and talking about like what relationships are for them, and a lot of them surprisingly were sharing about like young pregnancies and things, and so it was interesting on figuring out on like the difference between American culture and culture that was in Czech Republic, and figuring out like where we find commonality.
Right.
But during those trips, we had some college students that were documenting the trip, and every evening they would play this huge slideshow of breathtaking images of all the people who were involved, like mud's being slung all over our faces, and it's raining. The weather was horrible the entire time. But it's funny, you knew that they were there, but you never saw them taking a picture of you. And so when you do come across a picture of yourself on this like massive screen in front of hundreds of people, you end up finding yourself just like being completely taken aback and just almost like being wowed about yourself, because you see yourself in a completely different light. And for me, that was the first time that I ever saw a picture of myself. And I remember being brought to tears about it, because I was like, wow, like this is actually really beautiful. And even though my hair is a mess and I'm freezing, and there is mud on my face, and there was this massive smile across my face while I was lugging like logs and stuff on my back. And it was in that moment that I went, this is what I need to do too. Which quickly morphed into me digging and doing research on photography and how to get involved with documentary projects, and just this whole route that was paved with self-discovery. Unfortunately, my parents were not about it. So I actually struggled with being able to wiggle in with finding ways to dive into that deeper. So I didn't go to school for photography. I actually went to university for art therapy, specifically with a specialization with children with disabilities. So trying to create art and finding a different platform for children to be able to share, their feelings, certain traumatic experiences, so on and so forth. So in a sense, I still had the opportunity to learn how to communicate with other people through art. But there was definitely still something missing for me. And my master's program, I ended up doing new media journalism. So that was something I was able to tinker with a little bit more with photography. but started to dive in and figure out like, how can I keep up with everything that's going on, especially when you're having to battle with screen time with people who are recording things that are happening now on their phone and getting on the news that way, versus creating, dynamic quality content and trying to achieve the same amount of views. So it was really interesting to get some information that way. But I continued traveling, and when I got to DC about 2 years ago, when Behold Her, and what is kind of my main thing that I'm doing now, ended up being created. And that was kind of by accident. It was just formed by, a small group of women that I was trying to photograph, and made sure that the evening was intentional by trying to focus on, not criticizing yourself and learning how to support the person that's being photographed, just encompassing being positive. And a lot of the women were saying like, hey, if you do this, I'll support you. And that's what ended up morphing into what it has developed today, which is now an event series curated with 10 to 15 women, where we sit down for a roundtable discussion on topics that might be stigmatized or really sensitive, but we figure out a way to kind of lead it for others to feel comfortable about discussing it. And in the middle of those conversations, I photograph and interview each person who's attending. So they have their own personal platform to be able to share their opinion in a non-judgmental way. And in a sense, give other women permission to share their experiences on the topic as well. So it's kind of where I'm at right now.
I love that. I mean, when we first met, talking about the DC Magazine shoot, I was so impressed by that because, we connected on that level of just how DC is such a sort of impersonal city. It's all about like, who do you work for? Where do you live? Like, whatever, like that's the conversation. It's not like, what's going on in your life? Like, what do you care about? Who are you as a person? Like those kind of questions that get people really talking and not just looking good and avoid looking bad kind of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, we set the same type of intentions across all of the events, whether they're brunches or happy hours, or like we have a comedy show that's coming up this week. Our number two, or like our two big rules are no phones, and you can't disclose who you work for or what you do. So conversation is all derived on like, everything's personal. And DC is really good at creating those spaces and events that you need to do the business networking and to figure out the people that you need to continue to excel in the business that you've created or that you're a part of. But there isn't that space to be able to like let all the other stuff go. So that's kind of what we're focusing on a little bit more.
I just think that's amazing. Like we need to like recreate that everywhere. It's almost like a mini therapy session sort of, because like this is people don't talk about.
It is. We tell people, we're like, just want to let you know, even though you're probably here to like let some stuff go, we're not professionals. And like sometimes we do have them depending on like how deep the topic is. So we've had conversations about sexuality and consent. And we have other ones that are coming up late in the year based around eating disorders and so on and so forth, that we will have professionals available. They won't be leading the discussion, but they will be there, just a door at the end of the event. Need someone to talk to, that's available. So we do try and keep that into consideration, but in general it's more like a really organic, like fancy slumber party for the most part.
Well, and it starts the conversation because like I said, people just don't necessarily talk about that stuff, and I don't even know in their little friend groups do they really get someone who really is interested. Like I love how you said you're genuinely curious, because that's how I feel too. Like I mean I've done a lot of jobs, and my own business is about like being a sounding board for people and actually being, interested in who and what they are and where they've been and where they're going. So I hear so many stories of life, and it's just like, I mean, I have people coming up to me at the grocery store just talking about stuff, and I'm just like, oh, really? And I don't have any kind of counseling degree or anything like that. I never claimed to, but I think people just know that they can be, open, and I'm not gonna be like, well, that's crazy. No, I'm gonna be like, wow, that's cool. Like, thank you for sharing that with me. You know what I mean?
That's great. That's great that you can like exuberate that energy. So
so it's pretty interesting. But so what's been the biggest challenge dealing with all of that and trying to behold her, and what you're trying to create with that?
I definitely the biggest challenge is figuring out how to make the business financially stable, but
Hmm.
still financially inclusive.
Okay.
So diversity is a huge, it's important to me creating this community. Um,
Hmm.
and I find that a challenge for other people that I've seen who are trying to create similar communities, that they either have one of one race or one type of woman that ends up coming up, based on how marketing materials are being spread out.
Hmm.
And I've been very blessed to just have every type of woman, show up, whether that's someone in their 50s all the way down to, someone who's graduating college, to a woman who's, from Nigeria, to another one who's a punk rocker with like tons of tattoos, and they're all just around this table, and you look at it and they admit it too. They're like, I would never think I could be friends with you because of the way that you look. um, but there's that space is there. Now
Yeah.
the issue is just trying to figure out, the amount of work that's being put into it, in a sense, is extremely expensive.
Mm.
But I also want to make sure that I don't cut off the opportunities for voices. So trying to find that balance of making sure that, like, you can't sit here and claim, like, I can't sit here and claim that this community is inclusive if prices are extremely high and the people who need to have a voice aren't getting their voices heard.
Right.
So I think that's definitely an ongoing battle of just trying to figure out, looking into partnerships and sponsorships and stuff to understand that, like, we really are making a difference. There are people who come through here who are dependent, on this brand, to help them either personally, or to also just, something as simple as finding friends, and finding that they can be accepted. There are a lot of women that come through this series who just find themselves extremely lonely in the city. So you know, this was only meant to be a photography project, and the women who've participated have like forcefully, molded it into more of a community brand. And so I'm kind of standing here in the middle as this like mama bear, trying to figure out, how can I continue feeding you with the best like quality material that I can give you, but then also making sure that I'm taking care of myself as well as a business owner.
Right. So how do you think that style shows up in photography as you're taking pictures of all these women and their most sometimes vulnerable spaces, or just in a moment where they just show up, and it's like a photography, you just catch moments, right? So like, how does style show up in those moments when people aren't necessarily aware that you're taking pictures of them, or if they are?
Yeah, I mean, I know the biggest thing is a lot of people feel, I mean, photography is extremely intrusive. Whether you're there on the outskirts or not, or you're directly in someone's face, you're just like, it feels uncomfortable if it's not something that you do routinely. And majority of the people who come through, it's either their first time being professionally photographed, or they have been photographed before, but it's not as like intense. It's usually not required of them to like share something extremely personal.
Mhm.
So the way that people are showing up to space is extremely dynamic. So, and majority of these events are right after work, so everyone's high strung. You have some people already burn out from the day. You have other people who are like, I have energy. They have that like happy hour face. They're like, yeah, I can't wait to get drinks and da da da.
Right.
But the style is usually derived off of the topic. So I'm building a look based off of what's being discussed. So that also means like, so we had there's I want the light to be a little bit non-traditional from how you see portraits being taken, especially this year. Last year was a little bit, cut and dry with how everyone was being photographed, because I was trying to figure it out, trying to learn how to manage time. So I only have about 10 minutes with each person. So in those 10 minutes, I have to make them feel comfortable. And I have to figure out, how can I help you be posed in a way that's the most flattering for you, and that you don't feel like a puppet like the entire time. And how can I speak with you and give you compliments in a way that's genuine, and it's not the typical like, you look beautiful, you look gorgeous, blah blah blah, like, because you don't want them to be standing around and also hear those comments being said to someone else, and they're like, oh, this is just a thing that you say.
Right.
So I spend a lot of time on trying to figure out, I care about that person
Yeah.
prior to the photographs even being taken, so they know that I made a connection with them prior to them sitting down. Um, I have taken more time with directing people on what they're supposed to be wearing for the shoots.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm currently like planning just shooting on black backdrop for the entire time, just to kind of bring some intensity to the portraits
Right.
with very low lighting. So, highlights are being shown on small parts of the faces, and you just kind of see this like silhouetted version of this person. And it was funny. One of the women who attended the event a couple weeks ago told me that her mother said that she had never seen her as an adult before until she saw that photograph of her. And so for her, that was something extremely impactful, because she's like, yeah, my mom could just never really take me seriously. She always thought it was a jokester. But this picture is so elegant of her, very simple. There aren't a lot of lights that are involved, but her expression is very like stoic and beautiful, and it speaks for itself. And so I think that's the style that I'm trying to continue to bring for these future portraits. It's like, and the big slogan, for it too, is you're more than just a face. So it'd be extremely distracting if you just have this beautiful, gorgeous face and you don't want to sit there and read anything more about them. You're just like illuminated by that, but you can still be gorgeous and captivating in a sense where it, goes back to like being more curious and trying to dig in a little bit deeper.
See what she's really about besides that face, right? Because I think that's something that women have to, right? Like if you're a pretty face, that's all people see at first. Like, oh, she's this, she looks this way. But then what is underneath that? Like, who is she as a person? She could have either a lot of substance or no substance or whatever. I mean, and men can have the same dynamic. So
I make it pretty simple, even with the outfit change. I tell people, I'm like, wear very minimalist style clothing. You can wear a statement piece, whether that's a large necklace, large earrings, whatever, a scarf, something that means something to you. And we've had people that came in with wearing like brooches, and she's like, this is something that I've always wanted to do, but people always made me feel weird wearing them because they're outdated. And so like you get to see, even though people are dressing very like simple coming through, they have these gorgeous like statement pieces that they're wearing, and there's a story behind them.
right.
So it's not like oh, I'm wearing it because I like it. Like little focus pieces that they can still feel that they're an individual in these images, versus having everyone wear black and then it's whatever. So there are some little things that we bring in to make it a little bit more jazzy.
Right. So how did you find your style?
I think that's definitely still ongoing. For me, my biggest thing is I want to be comfortable, but I still want to look like a girl.
Right.
And so, like, for me, I'm wearing a sweater dress, but I was also like rocking like little snow boot things, or like, or like I'll usually wear either casual shoes, but then something nice, or it would be the opposite. I'm wearing something casual, but then I'm wearing like pumps or heels or whatever. And sometimes it's just because I want to be taller and so short. So I'm like, oh, don't ignore me. I'm in this space, I promise. But it's since I'm shooting all the time, and I'm sometimes I'm on the floor, sometimes I'm crawling up on things, like I want to make sure that I'm wearing something where I'm not flashing people, but I can still be in the space with everyone else and not look too frumpy, I guess. So I want people to know that I also care about
a bag and you wouldn't look frumpy.
What did you say?
I said you could wear a paper bag and you wouldn't look frumpy. What are you talking about?
Trust me, I can have frumpy days. Everyone has frumpy days. But sometimes I have to remind myself, like, I'll be getting dressed for an event, and I'll be throwing on some like jeans that have paint splatters all over them, and a t-shirt, and I'm like, you know what? I should try just to like clean up just a little bit, even though it's okay. But feeling comfortable is the best thing. I love wearing dresses all the time because there's just so much movement involved with it, and sometimes I just throw in either some like leggings that I have on now. Or I'll throw on some like soccer shorts or something underneath it. So if I am going all crazy, that like people aren't seeing my jewels and I'm all good, and everyone's having a great time. So yeah, I think that's That's kind of where I'm at. But
That's a good point. Don't want to flash at people.
but I like to also think that I'm a little bit of a collector. So usually when I go to other countries, I try and get some pieces that I know I could wear,
Right.
and but something that still fits in like my very like simple style. Like even now, like I have a bracelet that I got from Rwanda.
Mm.
And it might not necessarily be something that's traditional that they sell, but like I was able to, work with the woman who's working with locals and so on and so forth. And
Mm.
so it's like, it's small pieces for me where I'm like, I know where this came from.
Right.
And I don't need a whole bunch of layers of things and stuff. I'm very simple when it comes to how I present myself. And yeah, I think that's, but I know there's definitely some things I'm like, I wish I knew a little bit more about fashion. But
Well, speaking of of being simple, but like, so what are your five go-to items that you have, either like style or makeup or your face, your
I'm a mascara person.
okay,
I don't wear I usually don't wear any, I don't even know what you call it. Um, what's the base layer?
oh, so you can
Um,
like a
of like
moisturizer
powders,
or a serum,
concealers. I usually don't because my skin is so sensitive. But I always, it can be the crappiest day in the world. I will always wear mascara. That is my
right?
go-to. I freak out. I will not leave the house if I don't have mascara because that's the one thing that I feel can brighten my face a little bit.
Right.
Um, earrings. I always feel like I don't wear a lot of necklaces,
Mm.
mainly because I'm a little bit busty. So like you get the like one side boob necklace thing going on, and
Right.
you're like, "Ugh." Sometimes I'm limited on finding lengths that actually, suit my body well. So I have tons of different earrings that I think are really easy to throw on, whether you're wearing a t-shirt or you're wearing a nice blouse.
Mhm.
That's always fun. And then, yeah, those are definitely, I think, my first go-tos. It's hard to say just with clothing because I think it depends on my mood. Um,
Mhm.
if I'm feeling really lazy, I would definitely throw on a dress and some like, little uh, wedge heels or something like that.
Yeah.
If I feel a little bit more tired, or I'm sorry, if I have a little bit more energy, then I'll take the time to like layer and like have like fun little shawl things and whatever else. But yeah, earrings, mascara, good day.
Well, and your dress, because I'm a dress girl too, because I've always, when I tell my clients, is a dress is an instant outfit. All you have to do is find shoes and jewelry after that.
It's
You
one
don't
piece
have
of
to find a
clothing.
top and a bottom and
Yeah.
all that other stuff. It just makes it so much simpler for you
Yep.
time-wise that you don't have to run around and figure out, is this too long? Is it too short? All that stuff. And
Yeah.
dresses just are very inherently very sexy and feminine. So it outlines your shape. It shows you show up as
Yeah.
a woman. So that's why I like dresses. I
Yeah.
mean, so and when we did your
It's
shoot,
funny. I remember. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
you're fine. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I remember now I'm thinking about it like being younger and like same thing. It's easy. It's just like a big giant fancy T-shirt, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, cool. I don't have to think about anything. But I remember when anytime I'd wear dresses, people were like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "Nowhere. I'm just here."
Right.
And they're like, well, why are you so dressed up? I'm like, I'm not dressed up. I'm wearing one piece of clothing. Like, why is it a big deal? So I think it doesn't get the attention that it needs. Like people, I think people like take dresses too seriously, and I'm like, no, they're fun, they're playful. Hell, you don't even have to wear underwear if you don't want to. Like it's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and when we were dressing you for the DC magazine shoot, the red dress was just awesome. It just showed up on you as like this fun but sexy goddess kind of piece, and it was everything. So
Yeah,
it's cool. I love a dress.
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy what color and a cut can do, and then it can completely transform like anything.
It's
But
so
yeah.
true. Yeah. So how's your style changed over time?
Ooh. I would definitely have to say it's changed based off of like how I've valued myself. Like when
Mm-hmm.
I was younger, I was always having to buy the things that everyone else was buying in order to fit in. And, you know, when the new something or other would come out, or like hoop earrings were in, and, or, you know, Reeboks were the like cool shoes to wear. And, you know, like all these things would come out and you're like, yeah, I need to have that.
Right.
And then, and I never felt like it was me, or depending on my social group, you know, at one point in my life, I was hanging out with all the skater kids. Another point in my life, I was hanging out with all the Spanish kids, and like, you know, and your style changes based off of like who your friends are.
Much.
And I think as I got older and started having, you know, my own social and cultural experiences, and starting like getting to that point, I'm like, I don't care what you think about me anymore. Then I started realizing like the things I really liked and enjoyed wearing, and I started embracing and loving being different and not wearing the same thing everyone else did. Even
Right.
in DC, I remember being extremely intimidated when I got here, because I was living in Asheville, North Carolina before then. And for
Wow.
people who don't know Asheville, it is like hippy dippy town. Um, you know, and so going from there to DC, and I'm just watching everyone wearing like, you know, suits and like, you know, fitted skirts and all these things. I'm saying, I'm like, I could have a dress jacket. And
Yeah.
I remember spending heaps of money trying to get all these like business attire. And in my head, I'm like, I don't even work in a profession where I like technically need to like get out of my pajamas. And so I was like, why am I making myself feel uncomfortable knowing that like, this isn't who I'm trying to attract.
Right.
So it just got to the point where I'm like, I think that's what I really love New York, you know, in that sense that like you can show up whoever you want, and it's great. And you'll either be ignored or you'll get attention,
Right.
but you're not judged for it. You're like, oh, that person's kind of weird, or that person, whatever. You do you.
Yeah.
And in DC, you almost feel like you're a little bit more of on a stage and the spotlight. So when you do kind of dress outside of the norm, people are like, where are you coming from? And so now I kind of take advantage of that. And when you do get those compliments, like, whoa, where'd you get those shoes from? Or like,
Yeah.
where's your jacket? You know, and then you're like, cool, you're talking to me. Like, let's have a conversation.
Right. True.
So yeah, so I think it's based on like just self-worth. That's what's transformed for me.
For sure. And I think it's almost like I always tell people you should dress like you're going somewhere better later. So when somebody does
That's a
say
fun
something to you, you're like, yeah, I have a big party later. Because, you know, you should show up how you want to. And I think people over time, you know, with the consistency of you showing up like that, will notice and be like, wow, she always shows up like 100%.
You do know those people. I know I have a lot of girlfriends where I'm like, we can go to we can just go grocery shopping together, and they look put together, and I'm like, oh, I love what you're wearing. But I think it's like, where are you at in your life? Like, are you
Yeah.
in a spot where you actually like care about yourself and you're taking care of yourself, and that's going to translate into the amount of time that you spend dressing yourself and everything else, eating, you name it. So
Yeah.
if you're not there yet, everything else isn't going to fill in either.
Yeah, I know working with Stacey London, one of the things she said was it takes just as long to dress sloppy as it does to dress well. So why not just put the extra thought? It's really just more extra thought or energy into how am I going to show up today? And even the Italian culture is all about that. Like I show up and I'm here presenting myself to you, not just for myself, but for you. Like I put the effort into myself, but to show up for you well, not like, oh, I just rolled out of bed and I'm just going to wear these pajamas because that's easy. You know, how am I showing up for you too? And for whoever else I'm representing, my business or my company or my family or whatever, not just, you know, oh, I can wear my pajamas and nobody will care. People notice. They do.
Yeah. And then it ends up being a stereotype at some point, you know, like how we always make fun of college kids, like, oh, you see them as wearing sweatpants and whatever it is, you know, to class. And
Yep.
you know,
Pajamas and flip flops.
yeah, exactly.
So not cute. But so what do you do for fun?
Fun. Travel. That's
Yeah.
definitely hands down. If I feel like life is getting too routine or stagnant, or I feel like I'm not being challenged or learning anything new, I try and start looking for a trip. You know, even if it's something as simple as trying to do something within the United States, which generally isn't as exciting as going out of the country, but just something to kind of break free from like going to the same, you know, house and like going to the same computer and like seeing the same
Right.
thing, knowing this, if you're taking the same route every day to work, it's just like, it gets to a point where like, where's my life going? And I start seeing myself in this tumble. And so I have the tendency of picking up and going. I always say I have commitment issues when it comes to my location. So this is the first time I've actually like stayed put in a place. And now that I have someone that I'm, living with, that he's keeping me grounded. So it takes that extra effort to remind myself, like, I'm allowed to go and to have like my own fun time and stuff. So I'm doing that. I'm trying to learn something, like take a class each month that's different. And that I have like no skill set in whatsoever. So I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on this video or not. Not that it's anything risky, but but I just signed up for pole dancing classes this Wednesday, and I'm like, I want to learn how to work out a different part of my body, and this looks hard.
That's awesome.
So I'm excited. And last year, like I took Italian classes. Don't know a lick of Italian, but like for that month, it was fun.
Yeah.
And I did tango lessons another time. So I try and find different classes that I can get involved with that are interesting and fun. And it doesn't have to be a lifelong like commitment. It's just to like program something in my week that is going to break up that routine and makes that work week feel a little bit more playful, and you have something to look forward to. Like I love thinking like, oh, I just got to make it to Friday and I get to go to my Italian class, from this time to this time, and so on and so forth. So yeah. So it's kind of the same thing with travel too.
I think that's awesome, because I think, especially if you're in a relationship, but even if you weren't, and even if you are, it still makes it more interesting as you become more interesting. You know what I mean? Like, so there's
something to talk about.
Yeah, there's so many people that are just so like not interesting because they don't do anything. They've done something and they feel like, oh, that's it, but they're not continually exposing themselves to different cultures or languages or food or whatever. And that, like, as a human being, we should always be learning and growing. So taking cooking classes or tango classes or languages or whatever, that makes you so much more of an
sometimes people are like, oh, things are expensive. Traveling can be expensive.
Yeah.
If you can't travel, then look into doing classes, because you can find stuff on Groupon for like the tango lessons. I think I paid $20 for like 8 classes or something like that.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. And so you just gotta look and then you find something. But you're right. Like when you I have a girlfriend of mine, who's just like, I struggle to find things to talk about with friends and with my partner. And I'm like, well, what are you doing outside from work? And she's like, nothing. I'm like, well, that's your problem.
Right.
Like, go do something else. And now she's signed up for like some like intramural sport thing and some other stuff that she's like, oh, I love this stuff. I can't believe I stopped doing it. And now she's like already seeing that influence like her conversations, and she's having more fun like going out and doing. So I'm like, there you go. Just something. You don't have to work all the time. And people feel so guilty when they have to press pause. And it's like, no, you need it in order to continue living well.
And it exposes you to new people. Like you're not like stuck in your little circle of the only people that you know and you've been around forever. It exposes you to new people, just different ways of thinking. So and
if you are single, like you have a better chance of meeting somebody doing more stuff, and then you'll be more interesting. So
exactly. Like there's so many things around here, like Pros in the City, I think is a group that you can go sign up. They have a whole bunch of different things on there. Like I took helicopter lessons. They had these limousine scavenger hunts. So you get in these groups. What's
it called?
Pros in the City.
Pros in the City.
I think that's one of them. And then there's another one that's similar that does the same thing. But they even have like singles trips. You can go travel and you only pay a certain amount. You could go learn how to shoot a gun. like there's all these things on there that are just so cool that you can learn how to do. And it's like when I was in between relationships, I did a lot of that stuff because it was just like, I don't want to be sitting home, sulking about whatever didn't go right.
Nope, totally hear you on that.
Like seriously, and there's just so much to do in your own backyard. Like you don't, and it doesn't necessarily have to cost you a lot of money, but at least be interested and open to do something different, so that you broaden yourself, and by that, then you're more interesting to other people, and then maybe even you spark something for them to go do.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Yep, completely agree.
yeah. So, any advice to ladies or gentlemen out there as about how to run a business, or like how you're looking while you're running your business? Because I think a lot of people don't really understand that you're the face of your business. So before you're even able to talk to them about your photography or whatever, you have your visual look of how you are as a business owner or a person, and they're like, well, she looks maybe like she sounds like she might know what she's talking about, but I don't know what's going on here visually.
Well, for me, I want to like exude to my audience how I want them to show up for events. So if I want, so like with the comedy event coming up, like I have a dress code that I'm like, I'd like for you guys to dress up a little bit more. Here's specific colors to wear, blah, blah, blah. And like in my head, and I already know how I want to show up, knowing that I'm going to be in front of a crowd of people. Like I do want to look professional, but still fun.
Right.
I don't want to look like too professional where it looks like I'm like scary and intimidating. I want to still look approachable. And so I handle that the same thing with my meetings as well. So if I want the person to feel relaxed, I'm obviously going to wear something a little bit more relaxing as well, something fun, playful, casual. If I am working with a client that is pretty straightforward, there really isn't going to be much of a relationship outside from like being compensated and having to do the work that I'll do. Then I will be showing up. I kind of think of like dress how you want to speak to that person. I mean, it's a language in itself. So if I'm going to sit here and show up in gym clothes, like, and they're not in gym clothes, like already we're speaking a different language.
That's true.
And I feel like right off the bat, they might feel disrespected or offended, like, oh, I'm not going to take you seriously because you're obviously like coming back from the gym or going to the gym, and you're going to think like this is a quick conversation and that's it. So even sometimes it is only meant to be like a 30-minute or 45-minute, meeting and stuff. I put intentionality behind that, and I make sure like I want to show up to be able to receive what I want. And if I want to be valued, then I need to show up looking like I should be valued versus like hair all scratchy and coming in and you're gonna come with that energy based off of what you're dressed off of too. If I'm feeling like crap and tired, like I don't want them to know, like I don't want that to be the first thing that I'm like, yeah, I'm really tired. Like, all right, how much time do we have for this meet? Let's try and get this stuff done. Like it's not. In regards to like just running your own business, I would say one of the biggest things is like really don't be afraid to ask for help. I think I've found more in this past year when I finally had my breakdown moments and, was like desperate and I'm like, I really like, I need you to be here for me. I would always get the same thing back and it was like, why didn't you ask before? Why? Like I was here, you could have asked me for help. And I think, especially for women, I think we're so afraid to ask for help. Maybe it's the same thing for men as well. It's just a pride thing. It comes down. We want to show like we can get it done on our own. We want to display a certain level of independence. But like asking for help doesn't mean like, hey, I'm weak, I can't do it, blah, blah, blah. Like that's the only way that you're going to be able to grow and improve is you are able to establish a team. And in a sense, it would be something that you're proud of because you have people that believe in you and are willing to want to spend that time to
and you allow other people to contribute to you in that way as well.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem selfish or you're trying to like hoard everything and stuff. So and I know for me, the more people I get on board, the like less lonely I am trying to run the business anyways, because it does get really, you don't realize how much time you do spend by yourself when you are trying to run everything on your own. And it's a toll. So yeah, definitely ask for help when you feel like, okay, too many things are going on at once.
Yeah, that's true. Because nobody really, I mean, we might come up with an idea by ourselves, but we definitely don't execute it necessarily by ourselves because it takes a village, just like raising a child. Like it's
Mhm.
always good to have the mother and the father and the grandparents and the aunts and the uncle, because they're
Yeah.
all contributing to this child's life. And I think that's where they came up with that saying, it takes a village, because there's so much to be gained by having other people around you that can contribute, especially if it's in a positive way. Okay, we don't want the negative, but
Yeah.
in a positive way, people are contributing to you, and we're all here together. So,
Yeah. And I think there needs to be a balance between like learning how to take criticism and not feeling that when that criticism is being shared that you have to change whatever it is. I
mm,
think a lot of people think like when someone's just like, oh, I really think you should do this or you should not do this, that they automatically have to run over and fix that thing. It's just like, no, take that as information.
right.
Um, Figure it out. Does that apply or not apply?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, continue going your route. But don't feel overwhelmed that people are like, hey, if you're seeing a pattern, then maybe something needs to be
Right.
fixed. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, they take offense too quickly.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, to just be open to whatever you hear. Because it's the same thing if you relate it back to family stuff. I'm sure if you have a kid, you have millions of people who are like, hey, this is how you need to raise your baby. And you're just like, that's great information. I'm going to choose what's applicable. But like, don't get bent out of shape, when it becomes overwhelming.
Right. Consider the source. And,
Yeah.
and like you said, if you hear it multiple times, maybe there's some credence to that. But if it's just a random person that's just maybe off their rocker over there, then it's like, okay. But never take it personal. Just like the
No, they
foreground
just want to be.
says, don't take things personal. Even though that's hard if it's directed at you, not to necessarily take it personal, but take some time to just process it and then see, really what's going on and where it's coming from, for
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
So, can you share your website? And then you mentioned the comedy event that's coming up on Thursday, so people can find more about Behold Her and you and your events and everything that you're doing that's great and what you're up to in the world.
Yeah, for sure. So the Beholder website is beholdher.co. Easy to find events on there. You just go straight to calendar and it kind of maps out, what's going on for the next couple of weeks. So that's where the comedy show tickets are available. Actually, all the other events that are going on in February are already sold out.
Mm,
So there's not really much to share on that, which is great.
right.
And we probably won't pick up with other events till like towards the end of March. We actually launched a podcast club. So it's being navigated as a book club, but instead of books or chapters, we're discussing certain episodes of podcasts and having that conversation be derived off of whatever is being heard. Because especially DC, I feel a lot of people have time to listen to podcasts versus having time for reading books. But so that's going on. And then Instagram's the same thing. We're pretty heavy on keeping that alive, and that's _behold.her for Instagram. And we have a Facebook page, but we're just not as active on it. So that's kind of where you find a lot of the updates, like Instagram stories, all that kind of stuff, to see like what's going on behind the scenes.
Got it. So is there anything else, excuse me, that you want to share before we pop off? It's been a great interview, but anything else, any last minute advice or?
No, I mean, I think we pretty much covered it all. I really appreciate the questions, and yeah, I think it's just keeping up
Yeah.
and staying in touch and stuff. But other than that, I really appreciate this opportunity. It was fun to think a little outside the box. So
Well, I appreciate all of your time and especially your perspective, because, we don't necessarily think about style that permeates every part of our life, but yes, in photography it does, even in how we present our websites, our digital media, like all these things are part of us, presenting ourselves to the world and saying, this is what we're about and this is how we want to help others or whatever our message is. And we don't necessarily think about that. It
yeah,
does show up. And you want it to be a positive message and convey the proper one. I mean, the authentic one, for sure.
yeah, no, for sure. I think if you want to be approached and you want to bring warmth into a room, it definitely does stem with how much energy you decide and putting in yourself starting in the morning.
Mhm. That's so true. Well, thanks so much, Leah. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to attend one of your events in the future. And if we have any synergy, well, we do have synergy, but when we can be able to cross pollinate the style and what you're doing with Beholder, because I think it's just amazing.
Yeah, girl, anytime.
All right. Thanks.